Hey guys, I'm Naguura, and today we're going to be talking about how to play Moonkin on Mythic Denathrius. First of all, before we go into the video, I just wanted to quickly talk about the talents. Now, I usually recommend to you guys to go on Warcraft logs and see what other players of your class are picking, like what kind of talents, what kind of trinkets, and so on, to see what you should be running. Now, on this boss, you actually should not be taking the advice from the top rankings here, because if you look at the top rankings, you can see that almost every Moonkin player, in fact every single Moonkin player, is actually playing Warrior of Elune. And the reason why they're playing this is because it gives you more damage in phase 1, because in phase 1 you have all of these sets spawn depending on how many people are standing in the frontal, and if you have instant Starfire cast, you can just do a lot more damage in phase 1, and that's why they're playing it, to get those rankings. The thing is though, usually phase 1 is something that you progress through really quickly as a guild, so you don't need to change your talents just to do more damage to those ads, because other classes and other specs don't have to change their talents to be able to do a lot of damage to those ads, and they will still do the most single target damage possible, which is more important later on in the fight, okay? Moonkin's, of course, Warrior of Elune is not our best single target talent, and it will cost us damage later on in the fight, so we do not want to switch our talents here unless you want to get a ranking. Of course, then you're free to do whatever you want. But if you're progressing this fight, you should not run Warrior of Elune. Everything else is fine, like you can see here. I definitely do recommend Soul of the Forest, Stellar Drift, Solstice, and I also recommend Nature's Balance, of course, instead of Warrior of Elune. I also like going with Rest Affinity instead of Guardian Affinity, even though that's just like a preference kind of thing. But the reason why I go with Rest Affinity almost all the time is because in phase 1, at some point, we have to stop damage with our guild to get the perfect timings. And during that time, I just pop my Heart of the Wild and then I start healing the group. So that is, if you want to do something like that as well, if you want to help out the healers, if you think they're struggling at that moment, you can use Heart of the Wild there. Otherwise, if you're not going to be helping out the healers ever, then definitely go with Guardian Affinity, because if you're not going to use healing abilities actively, then Rest Affinity, there's no point to run it, right? Then you might as well just go Guardian. All right, so let's go into the video, and I'll tell you step by step on what I am doing and what I recommend you do as well. All right, guys, so I just had recorded the whole video, and then at the very end, I realized I didn't press record. So I'm doing it all again. Anyway, guys, so this is the start of the fight. I am stacking up with another person here because I want to get rid of 2 of my stacks from the frontal here. If you're a Moonkin and you are on 0 stacks at the very end of phase 1, then when the boss drags you into the middle, you're not actually silenced. You'll still stun for a second, but then after the stun is over, you can cast Stampeding Roar. That Stampeding Roar, if you have a conduit for it, make sure you have the conduit, Finesse conduit, then everyone is getting the roar and everyone needs like 1 stack less removed from them to be able to reach the middle. So that's actually incredibly useful. Make sure you do that. It only needs 1 Moonkin or 1 druid. If you have multiple druids and you're not the one that is assigned to do this job, then you might have to not get rid of all of your stacks. But yeah, just make sure you listen to your guild on what you should be doing and what not. This is not supposed to be a Denathrius guide, but a Moonkin guide, right? So let's talk about Moonkin. In phase 1, I am using my cooldowns on pull immediately. I am playing with 2 unused trinkets, Imperial Ordinance and Divine Bell. You can also use Quantum Device instead of the Divine Bell. I'm using my cooldowns immediately on pull without Imperial Ordinance, okay? The reason why that is because it won't be ready in time for phase 2 when I need my cooldowns back up if I use it on pull. So I'm not using it in phase 1, and in phase 1, our guild has to stop damage anyway. We have way too much damage onto the boss, and therefore it is really not required for me to do a lot of damage here in phase 1 anyway, right? I think most guilds should be having way more than enough damage for phase 1, so I don't think if you're progressing in this boss, I don't think you're going to be struggling either. Try to maximize your damage on the ads. I think if you're progressing, the ads should be your only issue here. And random deaths, of course, like fails and stuff like that. But when it comes to damage, the only thing that might be an issue might be ads. In that regard, make sure you maximize your ad damage. You can even go Warrior of Elune if you think that the ads are really a problem right now, right? So you can go Warrior Balloon, you can make sure you have your Starfires ready and make sure you just do as much damage on the ads as you can when they spawn. Have a Starfall up before they spawn already, pre-Starfall, pre-Starfire, dot them up when they spawn with Sunfire and just nuke them immediately. Once you're done with progressing phase 1, once you have enough damage for everything, then you can get rid of Warrior Balloon again. But yeah, in this case, I am just off healing a lot at this point. I'm just gonna pause for 1 second because we had stopped damage at this point. Our raid leader called to stop damage. So I popped my Heart of the Wild and I casted a lot of heals on the group because I'm not getting blood price anymore because I have 0 stacks at this point. So I'm just healing, you know, chilling, doing whatever. And yeah, you can do the same. If you also go Heart of the Wild and Rest Affinity and you guys have way too much damage, you can do the same thing, help out your healers a little bit here, make sure they don't have to use as much mana, blah, 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 right? It really helps out the raid for progression to do that healing part here if you have too much damage. Now, before the third, or during the third Ravager cast, as you can see right now, that's when you're pushing the boss. So at this point, I am applying my dots and I'm making sure I am 1 cast before Eclipse. Because once the boss gets into the middle, that's when phase 2 starts. And that's when boss damage is actually going to be important again, because phase 2 boss damage is decently important. Most guilds sometimes also have too much damage in phase 2, but that's more of a farm thing. If you're progressing the fight, I very highly doubt you're going to have too much boss damage in phase 2. So definitely want to maximize your damage here. So at that point, I'm dotting the boss. I'm 1 cast away to proc my Eclipse. So I casted 1 Starfire outside of the Eclipse to make sure that if I cast 1 more, I get into Solar Eclipse. And yeah, so I get dragged into the middle. And I'm also high Astral Power, so I can Star Search a lot, right? We get dragged into the middle. I am spamming my Stampeding Roar, so it immediately comes out now, right? So I'm roaring here. I go Moonkin form. And at this point, I'm just like Starfiring, Star Search, Star Search, Star Search. One thing to notice that I don't actually have any stacks, as you can see in my debuff. So I don't actually need to walk into the middle. I won't die even if I'm still outside. Doesn't matter though, because without any stacks, you're so fast, you totally will make it into the middle without any problems. But yeah, sometimes I'm just trolling and randomly walking around the side because I can. And yeah, the only other important thing you want to do here is if you can see the cast time of the boss, the March of the Penitent, before he finishes his cast, you want to use your Imperial Ordnance. This is important. If you don't use it here, your whole cooldown usage will be a little bit messed up. So definitely use your Imperial Ordnance here. As you can see, I'm using it right now. I totally recommend running Double Unused Trinket for the boss because it's just really good for whenever you use your cooldowns in phase 2 and in phase 3. So at this point, we fall down. I apply my dots to Remornia and to the boss. So Remornia, Moonfire, Sunfire. In case you don't know, Remornia actually does shared damage to the boss. So every damage you do to Remornia also does damage to the boss, which means you should maximize your 2 target damage. It's very similar to Huntsman Altimore with the dogs, okay? So at this point, dotting up the boss, dotting up Remornia, and then I'm moving over to Lady Sincere. That's what I'm assigned for. If you're a Moonkin, you're probably also assigned for this. And at this point, I'm dotting up Sincere, and then waiting for my Imperial Ordnance to return, and for my second trinket to be ready. You can see my Divine Belt trinket is here. It's not ready yet, because of course it went in on a 20-second cooldown when I used my Imperial Ordnance, and therefore I need to wait until it's ready. So I'm applying this. Because I still have to wait, I might as well just enter my Eclipse and get 1 Star Surge out. When you use your cooldowns, you want to be at approximately 40 Astral Power. You don't want to be at 0 Astral Power because your Convoke will not generate 100 Astral Power, but you also want to you don't want to be too much above 40 Astral Power because otherwise you might be overcapping. So just cast your cooldowns at around 40. So at this point I am entering Eclipse, casting 1 Star Surge. You can see I'm at like 40 Astral Power now. And now my my trinket had returned and my Divine Bell was ready. So I used my cooldowns on Lady Sincere, doing a lot of single target damage. Like if you guys play Moonkin, you know it's huge to have a CA plus a Convoke with double unused. Like that's a huge amount of damage. That's why Sincere is just completely melting. We have 4 Moonkins who are just doing the same thing that I am doing. So the boss is just getting absolutely melted. So at this point, I'm moving over to the other boss. And at this point, you only have a short amount of time to get your dots up. And what you want to be dotting is Remornia. You want to dot Remornia before you get dragged into the boss. And you want to make sure you keep your Starfall up, because at this point you're going to be maximizing your true target damage. So now we get gripped to the boss because of the Hand of Destruction. Now, one thing that I want to say here is that I tested something. Usually, at this moment, you move through the mirror to the other side to not get a lot of damage from the Hand of Destruction. And then afterwards, you wait for the Impale, then you come back, then you press the gateway to Gloomveil, and then you maximize your damage on Gloomveil. But the thing is, I have figured out that Moonkins actually don't die to this Hand of Destruction if you're on the Gloomveil platform. It really doesn't do a lot of damage at all. We have a lot of versatility, Bear Form, Barkskin, and so on. So at this point, I'm not going over to the other side. I'm just immediately pressing this gateway, going over to Gloomveil. I'm pressing Barkskin and then going Bear Form. Yeah, so I'm Bear Form, Barkskin, and you can see the Hand of Destruction did like 20% of my HP. Like, it really didn't do that much, right? So I just go Bear, immediately was fine afterward. I used a Healthstone, which I really didn't have to. There's no healer currently in that platform, so that's why I figured, you know, maybe I need to, but I really didn't have to. Like, I could have just stayed there forever. So definitely it's something you can do, but ask your raid about this first, because if you get the Impale from Remornia, you're going to be spawning a puddle over at Gloomveil. Of course, you can walk out to make sure the puddle doesn't spawn on top of the boss. But if your raid doesn't want you to do this, then obviously don't do this. Then you can just go onto the other side, wait for Impale, and then come back, and then jump over. So yeah, at this point, we just play the normal phase 2. There's really not like an incredible amount of tips I can give you for phase 2, because of course you just need to play the boss fight. Just make sure you do exactly what you're supposed to do. Dodge everything, dot everything, DPS everything. When it comes to how you should be playing Moonkin in phase 2, definitely keep Starfall up at all times. Always Starfall, Starfall, Starfall. And keep your dots up on everything, yeah? Make sure your dots are always up on Remornia, especially before the Impale, because Remornia and before the Massacre. Because before the Massacre, Remornia will jump into the middle, and then you won't be able to attack her anymore. So if your dots are about to disappear before the Massacre, then they will be off the boss for a while. So definitely make sure that you reapply them before Massacre starts. Make sure your dots are on the Crimson Kabbalists at all times. Sometimes Remornia, before the Impale, will go into between the Kabbalists. And at that point, you can Sunfire Remornia, and it will cleave your Sunfire to the 2 Kabbalists. That's something they can do once in a while. Like for example, you saw I actually didn't do it there, but for 1 second, the boss was actually, or Remornia was in the middle of the Kabbalists. So at that point, I could have Sunfired, and it would have cleaved to both of the Kabbalists, and therefore I would have saved 2 globals. So that's actually a huge deal. So whenever you can save 2 globals with applying dots, or save any globals when you apply dots, you should really take that. And yeah, one more thing to note here about cooldown usage is that there's 2 ways on how you can use your cooldowns from here on out. I personally think the best usage of your cooldowns from here is to use your CA plus Convoke twice in the last phase. Once at the very start, and once at the very end. But if you're really struggling in phase 2, then you can use your Convoke without your CA on the previous Kabbalists, on the second to last Kabbalists that you have to kill. So not on these ones, but the ones that were there before. So if that's really a point where your guild is struggling, you can use your Convoke there as soon as it comes back up, but you need to use it immediately as it comes back up. Make sure you're in a build window though, yeah? Make sure you have your Eclipse ready, look at your Convoke cooldown, and you see, oh, Convoke is coming up in 5 seconds. Then just don't trigger your Eclipse. Just wait outside of your Eclipse, wait until your Convoke comes back up, then enter Eclipse, then Convoke, right? But I personally think that it's much better to use your cooldowns twice in the last phase, and I will explain how that works in a second. But if you Convoke in phase 2, as I just mentioned, then you have to wait until your Convoke comes back up in phase 3, and then you will use Convoke plus CA once in the last phase, during Bloodlust, whenever your Convoke comes back up, and then you can Convoke one more time at the very end without Celestial Alignment, okay? Now, the way I do it and the way I think is the best, especially because most guilds are struggling with phase 3 damage and not with phase 2 damage, is using your cooldowns at the very start of phase 3 and at the very end. So the way you have to do this is if you play with double unused, which I really recommend doing, then you should use your Imperial Ordinance approximately 21 seconds before the last phase starts, 20 seconds latest, okay? At 20 seconds before stage 3, you have to use your Imperial Ordnance. You can see the timer is there, where my mouse is right now. You can see stage 3 is in like 24 seconds. So at this point, I am going to be using my trinket in a few seconds. Okay, so I use my trinket now at like 23 seconds before this phase starts. I use it a bit early. It's fine if you use it at 21 or 20. But yeah, at this point, we stop damage on the boss because we actually have too much damage here. So that's why I'm not doing anything anymore. We just have too much damage. That probably doesn't happen to you if you're progressing. So at this point, phase 3 starts. My Imperial Ordnance has already returned. If you look at my trinkets, my Imperial Ordnance has already returned. It's only 8 seconds left. And my other trinket, my bell, is also ready. So it has been 20 seconds since I used my Imperial Ordnance. So at this point, I am going to be potting, and I'm going to be using my cooldowns. So I'm potting, using my cooldowns. This is the second time I use my potion, once on pull and once here. So definitely make sure you don't forget about your potion here. Use your cooldowns normally. And then at this point, I'm just trying to get as many Star Surges out as possible. Phase 3, the only thing that I can help you here with as Moonkin outside of the cooldown usage is that definitely try to maintain Starfall if you have to move a lot, which is almost always. You actually almost always have to move a lot on this fight because you have to soak, as you can see right here, we need to soak the orbs. We get the shattering pain, so we get knocked back, then we need to move back into position. We have to dodge the massacre. We have to go in so we don't get, like there's really is just a lot of movement. And Star Falling is not that big of a damage loss compared to Star Surging. It, of course, is a damage loss, but it's still better to Starfall if you would be just like moving, spamming dots otherwise, right? So definitely worth it to Starfall here in the last phase to help you out with your movement. Whenever you can Star Surge and whenever there's no immediate movement happening, then definitely do it. But just make sure you're not walking around for 10 seconds without a Starfall up and without Astral Power, just spamming dots. And the other thing that I can help you with here is that Blood Price is one of the only things that really does a lot of damage to you as a Moonkin here. And you can use Barkskin for every single Blood Price. So what I do to remember it, because you cannot use your Barkskin while Blood Price is happening, you have to use it before. So what I do is I emphasize the Blood Price, I add a countdown to it, so I get the lady counting down 5, 4, 3, right? So whenever the Blood Price is coming, I know, and then I can pre-Barkskin every time to reduce the damage on me. That really helps out the healers a lot, right? And outside of that, just make sure you Starfall, make sure you get your 2 cooldowns out perfectly. The one other thing you want to pay attention to is that you definitely cannot miss your second Imperial Ordnance use. As you can see, my Imperial Ordnance is coming up in like 13, 12 seconds here. So as soon as it comes back up, I immediately need to use my trinkets because the last phase only lasts like 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So when you use your cooldowns as soon as the phase 3 starts, you can use your cooldowns again, but not if you're delaying them. Like this is a really, really close timing here with 3-minute cooldowns. So you definitely need to make sure that you're using it on cooldown. You can see I did use my Imperial Ordnance now. I used it immediately as it came back up. Now I'm going to say something about this try. We actually killed the boss before my Convoke goes through because we have too much damage. Right? And then you can say, oh, Naguura, but why would I use my cooldowns that way if I'm not going to get out my last Convoke? And the thing is, if you kill the boss this fast, like we do, then you killed the boss, right? Like that's good job, right? Then you have cutting edge and you killed the boss. And that's great for you. So it's not a bad thing, right? If you're progressing this fight, you should not be worrying about killing the boss too early, right? Because then it doesn't matter how much damage you did. It just matters that a boss died. But usually, when you're progressing this fight, it does not die early. Like usually it goes all the way to the end range of the boss. And at that point, it's really, really good for you to use your cooldowns twice because that's how you do the most phase 3 damage, right? So yeah, at this point, you can see my Celestial Alignment is still on a 4-second cooldown. So it is coming back up right now. Like I'm using my cooldowns right now, but you can see the boss is dying halfway through my Convoke. So of course, I'm not getting all of my damage here, but as I said, if you are progressing this boss for the first time, then the boss is probably not that at this point, and you can get your full Convoke out, and you're gonna do your maximized phase 3 damage. And yeah, I think that is all that I have to tell you about this boss fight. So I think there's definitely a lot more things that I could have said about this boss fight, but because this is such a long fight and such a complicated fight, I tried to keep it as short as I possibly can. If you have any sort of questions about the fight, you can ask in the comments below. You can come over to my stream, twitch.tv Naguura, ask me any questions there. I will be glad to answer any Moonkin questions that you have for this fight. But yeah, I couldn't go into too much detail for this specific fight because it's such a long fight and because it's so complicated and there's so many different things happening. But yeah, I still hope this helped you out, and I still hope that you're killing the boss. Good luck if you're progressing this. Good luck with cutting edge. I believe in you and I believe in your guild. You got this, guys. And yeah, just definitely ask if you have any sort of questions. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Make sure to also ring the bell. Make sure you come over to my stream and hang out and ask me anything that you need to know. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day, guys. And I see you on the next video. Bye.